Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Property Options. Thank you for joining us today. We have a guest with us, John Hermanowski from Remax, and we're going to discuss many different options regarding homes. So from the elder law and estate planning perspective, I'm going to talk about how to protect the family home if while doing your estate planning you decide that you do want to stay in the home or keep the home, and transferring assets to the home to children or to a trust. And then John is going to jump in and talk to you more about maybe moving, downsizing, things like that. So let's start by just talking about transfers in general. Of course, the house is part of that and typically the largest asset for people who are living on Long Island. And we very, very strongly will tell our clients not to transfer their home outright to their children, or any of their assets for that matter. That's because once the asset is transferred, the parent, the person who made the transfer, has no control over the assets that they've given away. So there's no guarantee that those assets will be used at some point for the parent's benefit. So even if it's a house, you have some concerns about the parents living in the house. If the parent eventually needs to, say, go to a nursing home, and now the house is empty and the children want to sell it, you don't know that that money is going to be made available for the parents' care. The assets also, once in the children's names, whether it's cash or a house, is going to be subject to the children's creditors, to divorce. If they have kids in college on financial aid, now that becomes an asset of theirs that could affect the financial aid eligibility. So there's so many different things that can then affect the child's life as well. Another big issue is if the child predeceases the parent. So if you transfer everything, including the home, to a child, and then that child predeceases you, that child has an estate. And if they're married, their will may leave everything to their spouse. And that would then include your assets, because to the rest of the world, those assets are yours, or the kids, even though you know, and maybe your child knows, and whoever did the planning with you knows, that money's supposed to be held for the parents' benefit. To the rest of the world, the money belongs to the children. Additionally, the assets are taxed as belonging to the children. So it's just never a good idea. There's really no good reason to transfer directly to children when it comes to either liquid assets or the home. Another issue with transferring the home specifically is something called the life estate. The life estate is actually a tax planning tool. And if you transfer a home directly to your child, you're going to retain a life estate, which is the right to live in the home, keep your tax exemptions. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But that has a value. And so what happens is when the house is sold while you're still alive, then it's going to be subject to a capital gains tax that it otherwise might not be if it was sold out of your name. So we always recommend for our clients to transfer their property to a trust, to an irrevocable trust for planning purposes. The creator, which means the person who's setting up the trust and transferring the home into the trust, cannot be the trustee. And the trust can be funded with any type of asset, not just real estate. It can be funded with cash, stock, bonds, annuities, life insurance. So that's all going to be looked at as part of the plan. But with our focus on property, if the trust is holding a home, we're still going to want the creator, or the person transferring the home into the trust, to retain the equivalent of a life estate. So instead of retaining that value, they're just retaining the things that go along with it. For example, they'll retain their STAR exemptions, VA exemption, any sort of tax exemption they're receiving on the home. And they're going to keep all rights and obligations of the property. So if there's a mortgage, taxes, any sort of maintenance or repair or upkeep, all of that remains the obligation of the parent, the person making the transfer, even if the house is held in a trust that will ultimately go to the children. The parent also retains the right to live in the residence as part of retaining this equivalent of a life estate. That means they can stay in the house as long as they're alive. So the trustees of the trust, who are typically the children, could never sell the house out from under them and could never kick them out of the home. And this is a huge concern when we sit down with the parents, with the seniors, that they're afraid. They've read stories. There's been horrible stories in the newspaper about, people making their parents live in the basement and all of these things. So this is a real protection for the parents in the situation. A lot of people are concerned with putting their house in trust because they're not sure that they're going to stay there, and John's going to talk more about that. But the good news is that a house held in an irrevocable trust can be sold. A new piece of property could be purchased also with the money in the trust, as long as the assets stay titled in the name of the trust, whether it's the old house, the cash from the sale, or the new house. The 5-year clock for Medicaid purposes will never stop running. Okay, so when you make the transfer into the trust, it starts the 5-year clock. That clock will continue to run no matter what you do with that property, as long as it stays in the name of the trust. And another really important piece of this puzzle is that the trustee, again, typically the children, and the beneficiaries, the children, have no rights to the residence during the parent's life. So the truth is, while some people think that their children can kick them out, the truth is they can kick the children out. So the parents still have complete control over the asset and complete responsibility. I'm now going to introduce you to John Hermanowski from Remax, and he's going to talk to you a bit more about some different issues regarding homes. John?
Thank you. We're playing a little musical chairs here, and thank you, Melissa, for inviting us to speak to the folks out there. Just to give you a little bit of background on us, I am part of a team. We're based with Remax in Smithtown. We have a couple of offices, though, one in Smithtown, one in Melville. We're actually an award-winning team. We are part of Remax's Hall of Fame. We have a combined 95 years of experience in the real estate business and sales in general. So we bring a lot to the table, and when it comes to probably the biggest financial and emotional transaction of your life, it's good to have somebody behind you that can help you out. We believe in a very simple principle, which is based on honesty, integrity, and trust. We will always tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear, but you need to know what to do when it comes time to deal with your home. We can help you whether you're located in Nassau or Suffolk County, or if you have a family member anywhere within the United States. We have a network of agents that we count on to give the same level of service and support that we provide here locally. We're happy to help you whether it's a member of the family that needs to sell a home, buy a home, if you are deciding to do things for yourself in retirement. We're here to help. We're all senior real estate specialists. It doesn't mean that we're seniors, it just means that we're actually schooled on how to help folks that are, say, above 50. We're also certified buyer representatives, which means that we can represent buyers specifically with the needs that they have and work in their best interests. Bottom line, we believe that we should, or that we do, listen to your needs. Obviously, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should always listen more than you speak, but that's part of what we do. So the first thing really that I think most folks need to think about, or the place to start, is to determine what their lifestyle, their plans, their future needs and goals are. What are you looking to accomplish? What would you like to do? Where would you like to be? Are you going to continue living in the home that you're in? Do you want to add a second home for, say, snowbirding or vacations? Is there a property in the family that needs to be considered? So that's the first thing, is to sit down and determine exactly what your future plans and goals are. What are your most important needs? Perhaps, some people don't want to live in the climate here in the Northeast anymore, and they want to relocate to a nicer, warmer climate, say the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, California, whatever it might be. And then also put some sort of a time frame. Is this something that you want to do immediately? Is it something that you want to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now? You have to put some sort of a time frame so that you know when to start making some decisions. Once you do that, you start to formulate your plan in a little more detail. So, for example, we often hear folks say, well, you know, all my kids have moved out of the area and I have grandchildren now in, you know, Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to be near my grandchildren. So now that may make a decision for you as to where you want to live. So do you want to be near family? Do you want to change your primary residence? Do you want to move to that area near family? Or, as I stated a minute ago, perhaps you want to set up a vacation home or a snowbird home where you can go back and forth and visit with those grandkids as often as you'd like. Some folks like to invest in a vacation home. There's a new way of doing things lately. People are buying timeshares, multiple timeshares, and using those as their vacation properties because in many ways it's less expensive to pay the maintenance fee on a timeshare than it is to purchase a home and have to cover all the costs of maintaining that home or having somebody manage it for you. And then obviously, and I've mentioned it already a couple of times, do you want a snowbird? Do you want to go back and forth, maybe spend 5, 6 months down south and then the summers back up here? I think a lot of it is going to be determined based on your analysis of what your future needs and goals actually are. We also tell people to speak with family members. Family tends to drive a lot of decisions that people make as they go on in life. It's also often a situation where perhaps parents or children are actually going to drive your decisions. So do you have elderly parents that need to be taken care of? Maybe they're the ones who need to relocate. Maybe they have to go into a assisted living facility. These are all decisions that need to be made together as part of your family. Some folks have family that's that may be sick or incapacitated. Obviously, that's going to drive decisions as well. We often hear folks tell us, well, you know, we have this 3,500 square foot colonial. We had 5 kids. They're all off doing their own thing, and now we have this empty nest. We don't want to live in a big giant house anymore. So that's which plays a role. I'll talk in a little bit about some of the financial ramifications of being in a big giant house that you don't need anymore. One of the things we always tell folks to do is see how whatever decision you're going to make is going to affect your financial health. Are you able to purchase? Are you going to do another mortgage? Perhaps a reverse mortgage is in the cards. These are all different topics that we can help you with. We can discuss with you and make recommendations as to what's your best bet. As Melissa had mentioned, perhaps you need to consider how your housing situation will affect your will or a life estate. So she's obviously the expert when it comes to that, and I highly recommend you speak to her on those topics. If there are other family members that are involved, it would be good for you to determine who they are and make some inquiries as to what their influences might be going forward. Okay, so once you've kind of decided what you'd like to do, the first part of the planning process would be to determine location. Again, a lot of this may be family driven. Do you want to stay local? Do you want to move out of the area? Do you want to add a second home? Do you want to have a snowbird home? What about climate? Some people I've heard lately are a little bit hesitant about moving down to Florida because of the fact that there have been a lot of hurricanes. Well, that happened to be what happened this year. You know, in years when there are no weather-related disasters, Florida is a place that everybody wants to go to because it's nice and warm. Second thing you should absolutely consider is square footage. Are you looking to downsize? For some folks, they want to upsize. Perhaps, you know, they have what we affectionately call boomerang children. Folks that are now in their early to mid 30s who have gone through school, have tried to be on their own and are struggling and maybe have to come back. So we've had folks that tell us, well, you know what, we need to make sure that we have a couple of extra bedrooms because our kids come back regularly. Sometimes in the home that you're in, if we go back to that big 3,500 square foot colonial, it may be full of your kids' stuff, even though they're long gone. So very often we'll ask, are you holding on to your kids' stuff? Are you warehousing your kids' stuff? If that's the case, now is a good time to speak to them and get them to start removing the stuff. Perhaps you like holding on to everything. Maybe your house is full of your own stuff. Well, I'm going to go into a couple of things you can do to help alleviate that. One of the things that happens to be a great way is to invest in a storage unit, because that way you can take your stuff and put it somewhere else, but still be relatively close, so you can access it at any time. That's for those people who really don't want to give up on the things that they have. So you'll hear us often tell people that it's time to simplify. Another good word for it would be unclutter. But simplifying kind of gives a little bit more detail. So let me hit on a couple of very important topics that you can do to simplify. So first and foremost, it's great to pretend that you're moving even though you may not be at that point yet. This gives you an opportunity to pare down what you have, perhaps get rid of some of the things that you have that you don't need anymore. My wife has 3 hair dryers. I don't think she needs 3 hair dryers, so it might be a good time to either get rid of or donate some of those items. Keep only what you love. The best question to ask yourself is, do you really, really need to keep something? If not, go ahead and get rid of it. Put more focus on things that bring you happiness on a regular basis. The benefits of having less stuff are pretty substantial. Less stuff will give you more time, and we can all use more time. With less stuff, you don't have to clean as much, you don't have to organize or dust as much. Your house will also look much more uncluttered and cleaner. And if and when you do decide that it's time to sell, you'll have most of your job already done. Let that motivate you. Learn to love containers. There's a whole industry built right now on storage containers and where you can put them. They're the secret weapons of any professional organizers, and I highly recommend looking into how you can put some of your stuff in containers. Everything should have its place. This is something that my mom used to tell me all the time, and you know what? She was right. When everything has or a cabinet, and your house is going to look much less cluttered and be easier to deal with. My favorite rule is the 2-year rule. If you haven't used or touched something in 2 years, chances are you're not going to. So that's a great time to take those items and either get rid of them or donate them. Don't let yourself get buried under sentimentality. A lot of folks will say, well, this has a lot of meaning for me. But yet, you may not need everything that's there. And one of the good ways to pass on the sentimentality is to pare down maybe 10 items to 1 or 2, and then pass those items along to the next generation so that they can now carry on those items for you. The rest of it would probably be well served to be donated. And keep in mind, when you donate, there is a possible tax benefit to you at the end of the year as well. Another favorite rule of mine is if you bring something in, you bring something out. So if you bring in a new item and you have an older item in the house that maybe you don't use anymore, don't save it, get rid of it. Maximize your storage. There are a lot of different ways now through furniture or boxes or containers that you can actually store things in out-of-the-way places so that it's very easy to deal with all your stuff. One of them is, for example, an ottoman where the top opens and you can store toys, games, perhaps extra blankets or pillows. It's a good way to store things out of the way. And then finally, the biggest thing is don't try to tackle everything all at once. It's a good idea to give yourself a goal of doing this over a period of time where perhaps you start in one room, give yourself a couple hours a day, maybe work on it for a week or so, and then you'll see all of a sudden that room has been transformed into a totally different room, and now it's time to move on to the next one. If you do that, within a fairly short amount of time, you'll be able to look at your house and see a totally different house with a lot less stuff. Obviously, finances are important, regardless of how you're looking at your home. If you're looking to change a home, what can you afford? Perhaps you need to lower your costs. Maybe you've hit retirement and you are on a limited income. So there are ways that you can look at different expenses and pare them down. Do you have a current mortgage? Like I mentioned before, if you can make that mortgage go away by selling your home and purchasing something smaller with cash, obviously that'll change your financial situation in a hurry. Reverse mortgages are a very, very good option these days. They're much better than they were years ago. That gives you the ability to use the equity in your home and live on a slightly better level. We have people that we can recommend to you that can talk to you more specifically about that. Taxes, obviously things like donating, lowering property taxes, that all adds money to your pocket. If you can lower your utility bills, perhaps lower your maintenance costs, lower your upkeep costs, these are all things that put money back in your pocket and allow you to continue living a better lifestyle without being concerned about dollars and cents. You should also take a look at, do you want to continue with a home? Would you consider a condo? Perhaps a townhouse? In some cases, the maintenance and upkeep is less because you're paying a set fee per month. That's part of your monthly homeowner fees. For example, we moved into a condo recently, and when I really sat down and looked at what I was spending every year for various maintenance items around the house, I couldn't believe the amount of money that was going out the door. And now in a condo, I've cut that in half. You also end up getting amenities when you're in a condo or a townhome. For example, maybe tennis courts, bocce courts, shuffleboard, a swimming pool, things that you don't currently have. If you lower your costs, you can also possibly travel more. So all of these things come into play. You want to take a look at what kind of weather your preference is. Do you want the warmer weather? Do you like the 4 seasons? Do you prefer living in a mountain setting or a beach setting? Do you need to have good health care? That'll determine where you may want to resettle. Is culture important to you? There are certain areas of the country where you'll have a lot more culture to participate in. Also, do you need any sort of special considerations, handicapped accessibility, perhaps being close to a facility where you will get enhanced care? These are all things that come into play, and it's just a question of deciding what you're looking to do. So one of the things that we also do is to tell seniors there are several things you can do to at least get yourself going. Number one, don't try to tackle things on your own. It's always good to find somebody that can help you go along the process. So this could be a family member. It could be Melissa, the attorney. It could be a realtor like us. The idea is to start to gather information and have somebody that can help you put that information together. We also believe it's important to learn about the process. A lot of people, especially seniors, are afraid to make a step because they don't know what's involved, and after all, they've become, pretty comfortable with what they do and how they do it, and now we're going to change everything for them. Well, if you understand the process from start to finish, that'll help ease your stress and lower your fear level. More important than that is don't be afraid to start the process. Take the first step. If you don't move, like when you were a little baby, you probably don't remember this, but you were not afraid to try to take that first step, and it may have taken several tries or several weeks, but once you took the first step, guess what? You started walking pretty well. So don't be afraid to do this when it comes to your housing situation and how you're going to pursue your life going forward. Now, it may get very emotional for you. Try to put that behind you. Try to look at it from a positive point of view, because you're going to bring up a lot of memories. You're going to remember things that you may not remember just by going through some of the stuff that you have, but that's not a problem. It's usually some really nice thoughts. So don't be afraid of it, and just move forward. Learn to detach yourself from your physical belongings. It's one thing if you have to separate from friends and family. It's another thing when you have stuff that's holding you back. The stuff is not important. As I said before, take the things that do mean a lot to you, pare it down to just the ones that are very, very important, and then take the rest and either put them in storage, get rid of them, or maybe donate them. Also, give yourself a reasonable time frame. Don't try to build Rome in a day. The best thing is to say, okay, I'd like to do this in the next 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, and use that as a basis to get yourself started. When you do get someone to start helping you, let them know what that time frame is, and that'll go into making the whole process a lot more comfortable. The most important thing, and I'll really close on the idea that you should always remember to look forward. Look at where you want to be. We try to explain to people that when they come to us, they have this goal. They want to cross the river, come from this side to that side, but they have no idea how to do it. And what we'll do is we will help point to the stones that you're going to need to step on to get from this side to that side. And then once you see those stones, the whole process will become a lot easier. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand you back over to Melissa, and obviously if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much, John. That was terrific. I highly recommend John Hermanowski and his team if you have a loved one who's looking to downsize or do something with the home in retirement, and also really anybody who needs any sort of assistance with buying and selling a home. So again, as we always end with, it's very important to plan ahead when you're dealing with real property. That is super important, because again, it is typically the largest asset for somebody who's living on the island, and we definitely recommend doing some sort of plan that is flexible and done appropriately. So if things have to change because of health or something else, it can be changed easily. So as we always say, in addition to educating your working elder caregivers and teaching them how to navigate the elder care landscape, employers should encourage their workforce to plan ahead for themselves and their family members. So remember to talk about advanced directives and asset protection planning, trusts and tax planning depending on your financial situation. Planning ahead will take the guesswork out of dealing with a crisis at any point in someone's life. And remember, over 65 million Americans, 29% of U.S. households provide care for an adult family member, and these numbers will only grow going forward. Arm your workforce with the information they need now and avoid a crisis later, because elder care is the new child care. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time when we talk more about Medicaid planning. Thank you.